And so this is our proposal by PWPA-LA very briefly, but we would like to go into panel discussion number 2 on the question, what are your initial thoughts or feedback on this proposal? And how might we translate it into real world action? And so just like last time, if we can hear from each of our panelists, and then we'll open the floor for discussion, further discussion amongst our panelists. So if I can, re-invite up our panelists, thank you so much. And if we can go to Dr. Josephson, would you be able to share your response to this question and proposal?
Well, it's rather outside my field, really. As I said, my colleagues know more about it than me, so I don't know if I have much to say. I could have a look at my slides if I can find them, but not that helpful. Now, which one? Well, it's just something I prepared in advance, and I think I may have to. Well, that's really just talking about how I moved from physics to critical phenomena, and then how the brain works, paranormal phenomena, higher states of consciousness. I collaborated with, did a paper with Hermann Hauser, who a chap behind ARM, and about language acquisition, and then onto hyperstructure theory, which is how structures develop in developmental processes. And student George Osborne did a simulation, and in came to the conference. The department said, that's not physics, you can't continue with it. Then I got in touch with semiosis. So at the moment I'm in collaboration with all these people, and it's Trevor and let me see if I can move this. Well, okay, I'll just look at it and say a paper by Karen Barrard, or a book actually by her, on agential realism, which talks about how things, you have articulation and materialization, which work hand in hand. When you use a special system, apparatus, things can now be said in a particular context, and these lead to more of these systems, which in turn articulate. I'll also talk about sign theory. Well, okay, the point is symbolic signs are a special kind of sign which allows you to express things, and these ways in which these can develop, which I am going into, we're going into, and the idea is these can be trained to achieve things. So this is how we connect, we articulate, having developed this special kind of sign. So I think that's all I have to say under the circumstances.
Thank you so much, Dr. Josephson, for sharing. And we've been very interested in your mind matter unification project and all the work that's being done there. So thank you. And yes, thank you. And next, if I can invite up Dr. Keepin to answer this question on what are your initial thoughts or feedback on this proposal, and how might we translate it into real world action?
Well, I too feel it's a little out of my expertise area, but I do have a couple of reflections. One of which is this idea of extending physics to take biological factors into account. That same principle of extending science to take spiritual factors into account and extending our awareness to take ecological factors into a greater account than we have. This is my felt conviction, or maybe conviction's too strong, a hunch, that there, just as we have seen, there are many layers and levels of conscious awareness within the human being, and all these subtle levels of conscious realization that can be experienced through development of higher consciousness. If we approach the earth and the entire Gaian field as also having these dimensions. There are many dimensions to the living earth beyond what we normally perceive and beyond how we have perceived, particularly in our traditional Western kind of Newtonian Cartesian scientific understanding of the earth as a set of physical processes. And with that kind of a disconnection from the sacredness, if you will, or the subtle and spiritual dimensions of the earth, and really treating it as an object to be plundered for our own satisfaction and needs, and all of that, which we all understand, that kind of disconnect from the earth. My sense is that if we actually were to approach the earth as in the full mystery of a living being and begin to open ourselves to a level of symbiosis that has been lacking, that many of these environmental crises, that we begin to work with the natural systems of the earth, both the biological systems, physical systems, and consciousness systems, which are beyond our awareness normally, that I think we would enter into, applying that same principle you were speaking of remarkable accelerated healing of both humanity's relationship with the earth and healing of some of the ecological crises that we're facing. Because those crises are exacerbated by our human attitude of disconnection from the earth, which has been unfortunately in some ways reinforced by at least the classical scientific, not so much a scientific viewpoint, but a set of dogmatic assumptions that have gone with that. And so if we reawaken and somehow begin to relate to the earth in the fullness of its multiple dimensions of being. I'll just give one simple example. When we walk out into the forest and we see all the trees, they all look separate. And we can cut one tree down and cart it off and think we've taken one of the separate trees away from all the other individual trees. But if we go underground, we see not only the interconnected roots of all the trees, but the whole mycelium network down there, an incredible, sophisticated and highly refined and intricate interconnection of all of these trees with one another that are constantly nurturing and supporting one another in different ways. And all of that is invisible to us above ground as we walk through the forest. So if we understand that the Earth's systems are also in that same level of complex interconnection, and as we would open to working with the Earth on all these multiple dimensions as the kind of locus of our home as a human species, and transform our entire relationship with the earth, I have a sense that the environmental crises would rapidly be also transformed, that we would be working consciously with the kind of subtle energies and forces of the earth being, of the Gaian system, in a way that we are not now, that would greatly accelerate, based on this symbiosis that you're speaking to, greatly accelerate the solutions to these environmental challenges. That's my hunch. I don't have any proof for that. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keepin. Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And next,
actually, maybe I'll add one more moment, since it seems Dr. Latan is not here at the moment, but he talks about soil and soul.
yes.
And that's really what I'm speaking about, is the marriage of soil and soul. If the human being really embraced that fully and saw the sacredness of the earth in its soil and in all of its biological systems, that through that symbiosis symbolized by the communion of soil and soul, we would rapidly transform the ecological crisis.
Yes, thank you so much. And I believe that as well. Yeah, Dr. Law let us know he had to go out earlier due to a busy schedule. But yes, thank you, Dr. Keepin. And next, we'd like to go to Dr. Jordan, if you would like to share your thoughts.
Thank you. You can hear me. I'm going to go outside here. The coffee shop's loud. So, when I talk about us as energy transformation systems, it embeds us in the energy entropy dynamics of all of reality. And the reason I say that is because the reason we're able to have 8.5 billion energy transformers called humans is because of the way we harness energy for the past millennia. And it's been a fairly extractive. And the future, I think, would require more mutually regenerating processes where the way we organize ourselves in our world, the way we harvest energy from our context, simultaneously replenishes the systems that made that possible for us. I think this means it's going to be incredibly difficult for 8.5 billion people to live pumping the energy through them with the industrial type of systems we use to fuel human beings. I think we're going to see, if we make it, I think we're going to be smaller groups living much more like indigenous folks lived, with a more mutually regenerative relationship with the context in which we sustain ourselves. And that will be at what we'll call the chemical, biological, psychological, social levels. We will find ourselves, living, I would argue, with technology, an enhanced form of integration with our local context. And I think that happens on a smaller scale than we're living right now. So I hope that's an answer.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Jordan. Thank you. And thank you to our panelists for answering that question. And we want to have the space if any of our panelists would like to add on, or if any of our audience members would like to also add on to this question or have any thoughts on the proposal and how we might implement it. So we want to open the floor for that. So again, if you'd like to share, please raise your hand and yes, we can spotlight you. Dr. Hiroi has a comment he put in the chat. Dr. Hiroi, would you like to add on to this question and this topic?
Yes, I just want to clarify the facts because we are kind of diverting from our original questions. In the first part also, why we need unification of science and religion, because both has good points and the shortcomings. By combining the scientific methodology with a larger scope of religion, including spiritual and God's, you know, world, they can do the much better job reaching the truth. And then about the second question, how to utilize this natural ecosystem and then also the Earth as a planet. Um, these days, extreme environmentalists, they, without studying the mechanism of 4.6 billion years of the Earth, they are doing extremely radical, like labeling CO2 as evil. But CO2 is a clean gas that is necessary for life on the Earth. If you don't have CO2, down to like 0.01% or something, we are almost at the lowest level. So instead of targeting CO2, you should be more concerned about more toxic elements like NOx and other pollutions, especially from China. So taking care of the first, those things that is against natural cycle of elements. Luckily, we have land and ocean. Land weathers, absorbing carbon, right? And then plate tectonics also resupplying CO2 onto the Earth so that the atmosphere will not be deprived of carbon entirely. So this planetary scale and then collaboration with bioecology, uh, that is more to study. And instead of just 100 years of human cycle, we have to look at millions or even billions of years of this planet. So we shouldn't be pretending that we know everything and try to reduce CO2 in our poor understanding of this planet. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Dr. Hiroi, for sharing and adding on. And yeah, thank you for your comments. I'm sorry I missed that earlier one, but thank you so much. And would anyone else like to add on, or if there is anything anyone wanted to, add on to this proposal or this discussion? Oh, yes,
Well,
Dr. Davidson.
Yeah, nobody's suggesting that we get rid of all the CO2.
That's right.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. I guess first of all, I liked a lot of what Dr. Hiroi just said. And absolutely, there's no question that CO2 is part of the natural cycle of carbon, which is clearly essential to life on the planet. And so the problem here is with the distribution of carbon and the distribution and the form of carbon. The fact that if we have too much of the carbon in the form of CO2 and too much of that CO2 in the atmosphere, then we have a problem with the transmission of the traditional electromagnetic energy coming from the sun and radiating out from the earth. And that's, of course, just the traditional understanding of climate change. But I wanted to relate this idea to the proposal that you mentioned, Jasmine. And you know, as a scientist, I guess as a scientist who focuses on the traditional forms of energy, which is the electromagnetic energy, one argument is that, well, photosynthesis was believed for a long time to be a violation of the second law of thermodynamics because it looked like it looked like nature was actually generating energy. And then it became apparent that the problem was the boundaries around which or the boundaries that we draw around our system, which is the Earth. We have to draw the boundaries around both the sun and the Earth because photosynthesis is simply changing one form of energy to another, and that transformation cannot be 100% efficient. It has to be less than 100%, which it is when you include the energy loss. This is electromagnetic energy loss from the sun. And so I guess a scientist could argue that we're not generating a greater output energy than the initial input, but this is just in terms of electromagnetic energy now. We are actually transforming energy from one form to another, and in doing so, we are converting high concentration energy to low concentration energy or energy loss, which we cannot use in any meaningful way because that energy is so dilute. So we're taking this is all about entropy, right? What we're doing is we're starting with a low entropy and we're ending up with a higher entropy as we have to, according to the second law of thermodynamics. So I thought about that concept when you were talking about a proposal using the words that were generating a greater output energy than the initial input. I think a scientist would argue with that and saying we just have to draw our boundaries far enough so that we're including all the sources of energy that come into the system. And in this case, the system is the planet Earth, and we have to enlarge the boundaries to include the sun. But that entropy always is going to increase, and the concentration of energy is always going to decrease. And again, this is simply for traditional electromagnetic energy. So that's my comment, and I would love to hear people's reactions to that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davidson. And yes, would there like to be any responses or comments in addition to that? If not, it's something we can also all think about and take with us too. But I do want to leave space if anyone would like to add or share. Oh.
If I could follow up on Dr. Davidson's insight, we have created over the course of evolution, or as Bertrand Russell said, we've turned more and more Earth into life, and it's been through what Dr. Davidson calls energy transformation. And what we've done by not looking at ourselves as entropy generators, and instead labeling salvation as some kind of transcendent space that's acontextual and has no entropy, we've avoided entropy. And we've avoided the cost of the planet of us being here. So, plus, let's just make it clear, we got 4 billion years to get out of here, or the sun goes supernova. Okay, so these kind of basic scientific facts, there are certain forms of spirituality that I feel actually cultivate an avoidance of our system, or of our existence as embodiments of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and the fact that we are natural born destroyers, and living systems break things down. They have to. That's what they are. So embracing that idea and then coming to grips with it and letting us try to better manage the multiple scales of energy, our entropy, our being necessarily creates, gives us a way to examine human suffering. I'll stop. I appreciate the comment, and I think that's consistent with how I would look in terms of going forward. Comment on your proposal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jordan. And we also had an additional comment in the chat from Dr. Hiroi about, he said, indeed, Earth absorbs solar energy of 6,000 plus K temperature and emits the same energy at 300 K, which is higher entropy than absorbed, which is how Earth discards its increasing entropy. Entropy viewpoint is more important than the temperature issue. Thank you. And again, we want to make space. Yeah, would anyone like to add on, or are there any further comments that anyone would like to make? All right, sounds good. Thank you for the insightful discussion that took place, and thank you for all your feedback and thoughts, and thank you so much. So if we can give one more round of applause to all of our panelists, our speaker for today, and then also for all of our audience members too. Thank you for your engagement and participation in creating this important dialogue that I think will continue to be an ongoing one as we further develop and expand on this discussion.